Beautiful day in Dublin, very low tide here behind me at Sea Point. I wanted to do a review of benzodiazepines and that general bracket of diazepam and all of those other benzodiazepines which are sometimes prescribed to people who have anxiety. So it's Killian Murphy going by there. Good to see you, isn't it? Lost the Cork accent. So my review of benzodiazepines, I suppose my main issue with benzodiazepines is that they are addictive, and everybody agrees that they're not just addictive but extremely addictive, and some people consider them to be amongst the most addictive drugs there are, which is surprising. I mean, you hear talk of heroin addicts finding it difficult to give up benzodiazepines, which shows you how addictive they really are, and that's quite shocking. And they have now become a street drug as well because of that. I don't know, because of that addictive nature, they've become a very popular street drug for people, sadly, because it's really destroying people almost as much as the other street drugs had. My experience of it, I had been terrified of taking those things from the start, and I still am. And my experience of it has been extremely, I suppose, a cautionary tale. I would, and as a result, I now, never took many of them. So during a period of anxiety, I was prescribed as well as antidepressants. The next step is, I suppose, the foundation step is doctors prescribe antidepressant first. Then, in my experience, a lot of people, if they allow doctors push the drugs on them without any resistance, tend to end up on 6 different medications quite often, which is quite shocking. And I think a lot of people would be surprised. And given what I've said in this channel about side effects and interactions and all that kind of stuff, I find it mind-boggling that people are on 6 different medications and they're managing to survive and be normal on that, because the interactions and the side effects between all of those must be incredibly complex and very upsetting. But the base foundation bedrock generally is they'll prescribe an antidepressant. Then if that's not working, they'll prescribe a Valium or benzodiazepine, short term usually, so that's the second one. Then if that's not working, sometimes they'll prescribe an antipsychotic, so that's 3. And then they'll prescribe perhaps a bit of lithium, 4, sometimes, even if it's not, sometimes for bipolar patients, and even sometimes people who aren't, which is surprising. I hear people talking about that, 4. And then maybe a beta blocker, 5, and then maybe a bit of Valium, 6, and then sometimes an antipsychotic is put on top of that as well. And some people say they've been very successful with all of those, but this is kind of the basket that a lot of people, through different groups, I've found a lot of people have been on that basket of 6 or 7 different medications. And I'm not here to say that that shouldn't be the case, because I'm not a doctor, but I do find it surprising, and I hope it works for people, but I find it surprising that that level of interaction, complex interaction between 6 different agents, is successful. And I sometimes wonder if it's just excessive and maybe making people worse. So I had taken an antidepressant and I was prescribed that again, but I was particularly anxious, so I was prescribed a benzodiazepine. And it was, the standard prescription is 3 times a day for 2 weeks. Generally, I mean, doctors got a bad reputation for it, for over-prescribing benzodiazepines in the past, and it's led to chronic addiction by a lot of people. There are some people who are on benzodiazepines for decades and they're in utter misery and their lives have been destroyed by it, but some people haven't, I suppose, but some people got away with it. They're more frugal with their prescription of those now. So 3 times a day for 2 weeks, or as required sometimes, is what they're told. And I resisted taking them. I had them as a backup, and that's the way I'm looking at even to this day, that they are there as a backup if required in an extreme situation. But I remember the day I took the first one, and it wasn't even a full one, so I was prescribed a very low dose. I forget what it was, 0.5 milligrams or something like that. I'll check that exactly, but I think it was 0.5 milligrams doses 3 times a day. And even at that, there was a nip in it, so I split it in 2 and I took a half. And I remember being out the back garden and I was sitting in a chair and I just felt this glow of warmth and relaxation all over me, much like what people who take street drugs would describe. That feeling of just a warm blanket and a glow of full relaxation, and I just felt, my first thought was, this must be what normal people feel like all of the time. And what I mean by normal people is that I suffer from a chronic anxiety. Actually, at the moment, I'm actually quite good, so it's strange to talk about it now, and I'm actually doing really well. But for many years, I've suffered from a chronic anxiety where I am constantly worrying about some fucking thing or the other. And this took it all away. It melted into the sunshine around me, and I just felt like nothing was a problem. I had just an avalanche of worries at the time, and they were all mounting up, and it just became insurmountable. But when I took this half, it melted away, and I felt this warm feeling of quiescent relaxation, and it was glorious. And when it waned off, I remember thinking, I can never take these again. That was my first thought. And the reason was because it was too good. It was too enjoyable, it was too tempting, and I could see exactly how addictive it could possibly be. And I could see that really rapid slope right ahead of me. It could be, I didn't think, there was any danger then that I could be addicted, but no one foresees addiction. No one says, I'm 10% more addicted now, and I'm 20%, I'm 30%, 50%, yeah, and I'll cut it off at 60%. That never happens in addiction. People say, I'm not addicted, I'm 0, and then years later, someday they find themselves in a gutter and they're 100%. And no one has planned that incremental step. It's a non-linear, very rapid decline into it, usually. So I decided to call a halt right at the 0 and said, I cannot take this. And I'm extremely proud of it, because there have been very tough moments over the years where I felt really in a bind. I felt really trapped, and the anxiety and that low feeling as well, but mostly it helps with the anxiety, and that anxiety was becoming really tough. And I am proud, and it's one thing that I pat myself on the back on. I can be too hard on myself sometimes, but I'm very proud that I resisted taking those things, because really you're just drop kicking the problem to the future. And I'm glad I just faced those head on, even though it was sometimes horrible going through that dark tunnel. It was worth it, because now I'm able to sit here and feel okay and feel quite calm on this beautiful day. And it's all because the self-denial that I did years ago. And not self-denial is quite a self-brutalizing term, but it's more a strength, really. It was where I summoned strength and stood up to temptation. And partly, the problem that the reason I find myself with this issue is because of addiction of people close to me. So I have been terrified of addiction. And again, that's quite a negative term. I suppose the positive way of looking at it is that I've been extremely vigilant about addiction throughout my life. I enjoy alcohol, but I've denied myself that too, because I could see how I could get addicted to it, and how it could ruin my life and ruin the lives of people close to me. Especially when I became a parent, I pretty much gave up drinking, because I knew I needed to do it for myself, but most particularly I gave it up for my child. And it was really when she came along, I pretty much gave up drinking. I have the odd drink now, but it's literally kind of 1 or 2 drinks a year for the last 18 years. And addiction has been a source of a lot of the problems that I was handed to in life, and it's the one that I steered away from. And I think addiction, I've often thought, no matter how bad things get for me in life, if I don't get addicted to things, to anything, then things will be okay. Because it's kind of a linear ride then, even if you get hit financially or hit health-wise or anything else, it's a linear way out of it. It's quite tough, but you can gradually and incrementally improve. With addiction, it's very non-linear. There's a real sharp downhill where you go down into a hole and you are down very far. and you've spent your money, you spent your energy, your health, your mental capacity, everything can just go very quickly, and you can really free fall without realizing it. That's the insidious nature of addiction, is that no one plans it, no one sees the incremental decline. They see it from the inside and they see maybe a hint of a problem, but really the picture tends to be that it's 0% I'm fine to 100% my face is in the gutter, and very little self-realization in between the two. And that's why I've been so vigilant about it, and I'm proud of myself, and I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. So as regards benzodiazepines, I was given, I think, a box of 3 by 2 weeks, so it was about 40 or something. And over the years, in extreme cases, maybe I'd say I've taken a half maybe every 2 or 3 years if the situation arises. So that original prescription of that, I must have taken maybe it 5 or 6 times, I would say, over 20 years, which I'm quite proud of as being extreme restraint. And I think it deserves that restraint, because it's a really insidiously addictive drug. And again, it's over-the-counter prescription, and it's totally legal, and that is the problem. And it's no wonder that a lot of people on the street are getting hooked and addicted to things like Valium and Xanax, because it comes with doctor's approval and it's very respectable. It's a respectable aura about it. But it can destroy people's lives. Let me know what your experience of benzodiazepines has been. I hope you have managed to keep them under control, and that they have worked for you, and you have just had the strength to keep them according to your doctor's advice, which is the way you should do everything. So let me know in the comments what your experience has been, and I hope things work out for you. See you next time.